Joe, I'm now going to start to ask you some questions for the rapid fire segment of the series. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Joe, when did you first know you wanted to be an attorney?
Probably sometime in college. I was active in campus politics and local state politics back in Massachusetts, and it seemed like a lot of the people at the time, apparently not a requirement these days, but at the time, many people in politics were lawyers,
Right.
and I thought it would be a great segue. It was not, litigation came later.
Joe, do you have a favorite attorney or group of attorneys to litigate against?
It's kind of interesting. I don't have a specific name, but I would say that what we see, particularly in the antitrust and securities arena, there are always the big defense firms that have a lot of talent.
Sure.
And I think over 30 plus years of doing this kind of litigation in private practice and previously with the DOJ, I would characterize it this way. If I can be straight with someone across the table from me and they're straight with me, we get along very well. And that is typically my relationship with a lot of the defense bar. In fact, a number of my opponents are good friends. And
that's telling.
And then relationships that develop from those adversarial contacts
Sure.
Really allow you to get to know people quite well.
In your opinion, what's been sort of the biggest change to the class action landscape over the last 5 to 10 years?
Well, surprisingly, I predicted that with the crash of 2008 that there would be a much more resurgent upswing, a positive environment for both investors, consumers, small businesses to more easily vindicate their rights. And I think the macro mood of the country, maybe the election, the most recent presidential election that we've seen reflects that, has not gone in that direction. I think there is some negativism that's pervaded the way the courts view the cases that we bring, a certain cynicism, and it's been disappointing that there hasn't been a stronger rejoinder in favor of investor and consumer rights. That to me has been a shift. And I also think that the pervasive effect of years of pro-business Republican appointees has taken its toll.
I agree with you, and one of the things I just recently discussed with another guest is the inability of the plaintiffs' bar to really win the PR war, and that being one of the root causes behind sort of, I don't want to say people voting against their interests, but maybe not having a full understanding of the benefit that the class action device brings to regular consumers, regular investors, et cetera.
Well, it might very well be that people won't appreciate the importance of class actions until they're gone or they've changed. And what we're now seeing in the securities arena, I'll give you an example. You're seeing many more cases that are brought as opt-out litigations. You're seeing much more heavily contested class certification motions. The result of that is that many cases are now being brought individually as opposed to class actions. Right. And what happens there? The big money gets represented as on the plaintiff side, and the consumers and the small investors get left in the dust. So I do think it's unfortunate, but look, the Chamber of Commerce is a very, very effective adversary. The pro-business interests, they currently have the ear of the government and all three branches of it, and it's going to be a difficult couple of years. I do think, to be optimistic, the pendulum swings, and what goes up must come down and vice versa. So I've seen it go both ways.
Joe, what's your favorite legal movie?
My Cousin Vinny.
Good, and I might add popular answer here on.
Yeah, I don't know why it could be anything other than that. I grew up watching the Perry Mason series when I was a kid because I'm old enough to remember that. But the way that case presents great novel legal issues,
right?
And who can forget the Two Utes?
Two Utes. So, favorite non-legal movie?
I think I would probably go with Fever Pitch, being a Boston Red Sox fan.
Oh, there you go. Joe, do you have a book that you've gifted more than other books in your life to either to associates, to colleagues, to friends, a book you like to share?
You know, way back in the 60s and 70s in college, Alvin Toffler wrote a book called Future Shock, and I picked it up about a year ago, and I read it, and to me it's worth rereading because 30 years ago, 35 years ago, he was writing about things that we are now living with today.
Right.
And then I would look at in our world of financial fraud, I love the work that Michael Lewis has done.
Sure.
I'd certainly recommend those reads. And I plowed through Hamilton, but I wouldn't pass that on to anybody. I think it's easy to go see the play.
Yeah, I preferred the play. I tried to get through the book. It wasn't. It was a little too dense for me, but the play was fantastic.
Right now we know why we have an electoral college.
Right. Joe, what was your least favorite class in law school and why?
Probably income tax. That was a mistake for me to sign up for that because it was elective. And God bless those people who do that work. You know.
I'll tell you, I hated income tax too. It was an election for me, but I hated the nitty gritty of it, but I really enjoyed sort of discussing the policy issues behind why we incentivized certain things, right? Like why there was a mortgage deduction because we wanted to incentivize home ownership. And I think there was a real story there. Still the worst grade I got in law school was income tax. What do you see as the biggest growth area of class action law, in the future?
Well, you know, it's always hard to see what's around the corner because bad guys continue to reinvent themselves. You know, I would say I do have a view that most businesses are honestly run, but a certain percentage of them are not. And as we get into cybersecurity, for instance, and the threat of cyber fraud, there's billions of dollars in this economy that are getting moved around that we're not even aware of. So I do think that litigation will catch up with those kinds of frauds and crime. That has to be a growth area. I don't know exactly what shape it's going to take.
Right.
I think the courts are going to have to address it over time. I would certainly like to think that antitrust and securities would continue to play a role. And again, because I've seen the pendulum swing, I would say that those traditional areas could come back.
So which of the following cases was worst for the plaintiff bar? Carrera, Concepcion, Dukes, or Spokio?
You know, all of the above. You know, it was multiple blows. You didn't mention Morrison in there. I would have to put that on the list as well as a securities litigator.
Paul Geller made the exact same point.
Yeah, and Concepcion, disaster. Spokio, disaster. These are tough, and I think that, you know, when we talk about the politicization of our courts, the fact that the Republicans were able to steal that fifth seat, the ninth seat, however you claim it, does not bode well for consumer interests.
Joe, is there a particular nonprofit that's near and dear to your heart?
Well, here in San Francisco, I've been on the board of Bay Area Legal Aid, and I've been on the board for over 20 years. And to me, they play an incredibly important role, and it's all the legal aid societies in this country. They're under attack right now. Congress is threatening to slash LSE funding, and they are the safety net for the poorest of the poor.
Sure.
And I think as lawyers, we have a particular obligation to not deny justice to the people who among us are in the least position to afford to lose it.
Great. Would you advise the next generation to go to law school?
Well, my daughter is recently admitted to the California bar. I can't say that I urged her strongly to do it, but being as a plaintiff's lawyer, I have to be a bit of a contrarian.
Right.
So I would think that now, while lawyers are you know, feeling somewhat abused perhaps as a profession, it's probably a good time to go to law school.
Right.
And I would encourage it. I mean, this country, the foundation of this country is built on laws and men. And without the laws and the people to enforce those laws, we're nowhere.
It's a great answer. My final question is, what do you say to people like your daughter who at the at the very beginning of their legal career? If you had one piece of poignant advice to sort of pass down to that generation, what would it be?
Keep an eye on the big picture. The first couple of years out of law school, most jobs are very tough. There isn't a lot of positive feedback. But one of the things that I can reflect on, having survived those first couple of years, is that when you get past that time, the rewards are greater and the satisfaction of doing the job becomes greater as you develop the tools. They call it the practice of law for a reason. It really takes practice to get good at it. And after you have that bag of tools, you can then use it in any variety of ways that are unique in our society. And you don't want to lose that opportunity. So hang in there and stick with it.
It's great, Joe. I can't thank you enough for joining us
Sure.
today.
My pleasure.